When it comes to serial killers, let's face it, men are the main offenders. However, there are many women who also love to commit these grisly murders and crimes. You'd be horrified to know what crimes these female serial killers have committed, from poison to torture to cannibalism. These are 10 terrifying female serial killers who were not known for that gentle feminine touch. Number 10. Leonarda Cianciulli. Cianciulli was born in Montella, Italy. While still a young girl, Leonarda attempted suicide twice. In 1914, she married a registry officer's clerk, Raffaele Pansardi. Her parents didn't approve of the marriage. Leonarda would often visit a gypsy who told her that she would marry and have children, but all of her children would die. Cianciulli had 17 pregnancies during her marriage, but lost 3 of the children to miscarriage, and 10 more died in their youth. In order to save her remaining children, this superstitious woman decided to turn to murder. Leonarda Cianciulli murdered 3 women between 1939 and 1940. Most serial killers would discard their victims' bodies, but not Leonarda. In a book she wrote titled An Embittered Soul's Confessions, she describes how she turned their corpses into soap and tea cakes. She states, "I threw the body pieces into a pot, added 7 kilos of caustic soda, which I had brought to make soap, and stirred the whole mixture until the pieces dissolved into a thick, dark mush that I poured into several buckets and emptied in a nearby septic tank. As for the blood in the basin, I waited until it had coagulated, dried it in the oven, ground it, and mixed it with flour, sugar, chocolate, milk, and eggs, as well as a bit of margarine. Kneading all the ingredients together, I made lots of crunchy tea cakes and served them to the ladies who came to visit, though Giuseppe and I also ate them." Number 9. Nanny Doss, also known as the Giggling Granny. On the outside, Nanny Doss of Tulsa, Oklahoma was a friendly neighbor, wife, and parent. On the inside lurked the cold-blooded murderer who nearly wiped out her entire family. Between the 1920s and 1954, Nanny Doss killed victims that were closest to her, including 4 of her 5 husbands, her mother, sister, mother-in-law, and even her grandson. Murdering her victims with arsenic, she poisoned them across 4 states. Due to a tendency to laugh merrily during interrogations, she was nicknamed the Giggling Granny. Her murders were motivated by marital boredom and a dream of discovering the ideal husband, as described in her favourite true romance magazines. "That's about it," Nanny told her interrogators. "I was searching for the perfect mate, the real romance of life." She was sent to prison for life in 1964. She succumbed to leukemia the following year. And number 8. Juana Barraza. Born in 1956, Juana Barraza's mother was an alcoholic who traded Juana to an unknown man for 3 beers. This man would continuously rape Juana, leading her to give birth to 4 of his children. Being brought up in this hellish environment led Juana to a dangerous path to becoming a murderer. Starting in 1990, Juana would murder women over 60 who lived alone. Gaining trust with the victims by pretending to be a government official, she would gain access to the house where she would murder and rob them. Witnesses assumed Juana was a male dressed as a woman due to her masculine features, which shocked everyone when the police arrested a woman. She was tried in 2008 and found guilty on 16 charges of murder and aggravated burglary and 11 separate counts of murder. She was sentenced to 759 years in prison. Number 7. Aileen Wuornos. Growing up, Aileen had experienced a horrifying childhood. Her father killed himself while serving prison time for child molestation, while her mother abandoned Aileen and older brother Keith, leaving them to be raised by their grandparents. Yet Wuornos' grandmother was alleged to be an alcoholic and her grandfather a terrifying, violent man. She was sexually abused and eventually thrown out of home as a teenager. To survive, she made a living working as a sex worker on Florida's highway. Aileen Carol Wuornos killed 7 men in Florida between 1989 and 1990. Aileen claimed that her victims had either raped or attempted to rape her while she was working as a prostitute. Claiming self-defense to all of her killings, she was later convicted and sentenced to death for the murders. She was executed by the state of Florida by lethal injection on October 9, 2002. Number 6. Belle Gunness. Norwegian-American Belle Gunness targeted upper-class men with sources of wealth and hefty life insurance policies. Gunness' killing started in the late 19th century when she murdered her first 2 husbands. She placed an ad in the local paper which attracted 7 more of her victims. The personal ad stated, "Comely widow who owns a large farm in one of the finest districts in LaPorte County, Indiana, desires to make the acquaintance of a gentleman equally well provided with view of joining fortunes. Triflers need not apply." In order to escape authorities, Belle set her own house on fire, killing her 3 children in the process, along with leaving a headless woman's body that was thought to be her. However, Belle was reportedly sighted around the United States for decades afterwards, but her ultimate fate is unknown. Police eventually found 40 victims on Belle's farm. Number 5. Jane Toppan. In 1901, Jane Toppan, also known as Jolly Jane, was a sadistic nurse who manipulated hospital records. She would experiment with morphine and atropine on her patients. Known as the Killer Angel, she would administer an overdose of the drugs to her victims and sit with them until they died. Jane Toppan finally confessed to 31 murders and claimed her goal was to have killed more people, helpless people, than any other man or woman who ever lived. Declared insane, she was confined to a state retard farm, where she died at the age of 84. Number 4. Mary Bell. Mary Bell committed her crimes at the age of 11, strangling to death 2 young boys who were 3 and 4 years old in Scotswood, England. After killing them, Mary reportedly returned to the scene and carved the letters M into the boys' stomachs with a razor, along with other terrifying mutilations. After being caught and tried in 1968, Mary was found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to life imprisonment. She was released with a new identity in 1980 at the age of 23. She has lived under court-protected anonymity ever since. In 1998, Bell collaborated with author Gita Sarini on a book about her life called Cries Unheard, the story of Mary Bell. Number 3. Gwen Graham and Cathy Wood. Gwen Graham and Cathy Wood met at the Alpine Nursing Home in Rhode Island whilst working as nurse aides. The 2 women started dating and together planned to murder 5 elderly female patients in order to get a thrill to enhance their lovemaking. The couple later broke up after Gwen started dating another woman and moved to Texas. Devastated, Cathy broke down and confessed to the murders to authorities. In 1988, Gwen received a penalty of life imprisonment and Cathy got 20 years in prison. Number 2. Janine Jones. Janine Jones, a paediatric nurse, is suspected to have killed up to 60 infants between 1971 and 1984. She is known to have injected her patients with the drugs digoxin and heparin, which would induce sickness so that Janine would revive them and get praise for saving their lives. However, many of her victims didn't survive the injections. The staff eventually started getting suspicious of the number of babies that were dying under her care. Instead of calling the police, they asked her to leave. Janine resumed her injections at a new hospital job, where she was ultimately charged with poisoning 6 children. Janine is currently in a Texas prison and is thought to be the inspiration for Annie Wilkes in the Stephen King novel Misery. Number 1. Myra Hindley. Myra Hindley grew up with a grandmother in Manchester, England. After leaving school at the age of 15, she met and fell in love with Ian Brady, a stock clerk who had recently been released from prison. Myra gave herself over to him, where she would agree to his every word. Testing her blind allegiance, Brady hatched plans of rape and murder. In partnership, the couple committed the rapes and murders of 5 small children. Myra's brother-in-law tipped her off to the police for the crimes. She was found guilty of 3 murders and was jailed for life, where she would have become a devout Catholic. She was never released and died in prison in 2002.